engineer was that it was difficult, very difficult, to be able to find all the information I needed to do my job. I had to log on to one computer here and learn one programming language. I had to learn here, I had to log on to a different computer and learn a documentation system. And here I had to log on to a different computer, maybe using a different network, and learn how to get in touch with the library system. And when I got into some information, maybe I could get it back, but often if I got it back, it was in a format that I couldn't directly use it on my computer. So it was an obvious frustration. If you're a software engineer, then you know that these frustrations are a challenge to your imagination. If you can imagine things being better, then you ought to go and write the program. So the idea was that life could be better. There could be one imaginary information system which one made to include all these others, to include them with references between them, with links that you could click on. It's a really simple idea, and I wrote it up in a memo. I wrote it in a memo because CERN is a physics lab. It's not really set up to do software, so there wasn't anywhere you could apply to do some software. And in fact, it has to stop people writing software, because all these creative people, if you let them write all the software they wanted, they'd be spending no time doing anything else, because it's so much fun solving these problems by writing new software, making up programs. So I passed around the memo, and a year later, nothing really had happened. Somebody asked me, "Oh, what about that idea, that hypertext, that information system?" I said, "Well, I sent you a memo." And they said, "Oh, did you? Oh, could you send it again?" So I sent it around, and I put the date March 1989, which was the first time, comma, May 1990, which was the second time, just to rub it in, make it obvious. Sent it around, and again, nothing happened. But then one of these special things happened. My boss, Mike Sendell, allowed me to buy a fancy new computer system. Those black boxes called Next, which Steve Jobs was producing at that time, were the latest thing in computing, and the latest thing particularly in systems which you could write which were good for writing new programs. They had a great development environment. So the plan was to buy one of these Nexts and see how good it was. And so by doing that, and in order to see how good it was, I should design some program on it, some random program. How about that hypertext thing you were talking about? So he didn't really give me the nod, but he gave me the wink. He said, "Go ahead." And that was what allowed me to actually write the software, make a web browser, make a web editor. So at the time, I had to sacrifice a few things. Most systems people expected to be completely inconsistent, but I realized that in order to have a system which would grow, we'd occasionally have to have links which didn't go anywhere. And you'll find that when you use the web now, sometimes there'll be a link goes somewhere that's gone away. But that was, in fact, a really important engineering decision, because to make the whole web consistent would have been unscalable. It wouldn't have worked. It would have stopped the web growing. So that was the technology. That was, if you like, the invention. But what was more exciting for me than the technology itself was the way that took off as a community. It was a community of people, random people, in different fields, different countries. Somebody would hear about it. I'd give a talk, not to an audience of this size, much smaller one, but maybe 3 people at the back might be sufficiently excited to go away and do something. And they would send me an email. I'd get an email from one of them saying, "Oh, I'm running a web server now. I've put some photos on it. It's an exhibition at Vatican Renaissance art. It's a dinosaur exhibit. It's all kinds of things." And they sent me a list. They sent me the URL, the thing with HTTP, which tells you the name of a web server. And I kept a list of all the web servers, and I have a copy of that list from November 1991, when it had 26 web servers on it. At that time, I had a copy of my whole website on a floppy disk, which I could take to conferences. So that community of people growing faster and faster was what made it take off. And it's the creativity and also the public spiritedness of people out there just thinking, well, I know the web hasn't taken off yet, but if everybody started a web server, it would be great. So I will do it. There are some people who, when it would be great if everybody did X, they will do X, just for the sake of it. Those people did it, and it took off. And that first web server, which was still that black box on my desk for a long time, when we looked at the number of people who'd viewed it, each month, the number of people who'd looked at that web server was 10 times the number of people for the same month a year before. So the interest in the that one web server was going up by a factor of 10 every year. An exponential growth, a very steady exponential growth. So at first it was geeks who were excited, and then it was The Economist, I think, was the first newspaper, then other newspaper, then the tabloid press. And then even ministers and heads of state started to become aware of this as the news spread, and we realized that we needed to coordinate this growth. So that was the point when I went around the world looking for places to start some World Wide Web consortium. Companies wanted to make a consortium, and so they needed somewhere that they could trust to join together and build consensus. Because the important thing about the web is that it's only one web. When you follow a link from a web page, it can go to any place. You don't have an academic web and a commercial web. You don't have a web of high-quality documents and a separate web of low-quality documents, and then a system for promoting them from one to the other. Whenever you draw a line, if you ever draw a line through the web into two halves so that links can't cross from one to the other, then you destroy the web, because suddenly the value of each half is terribly badly damaged, and each half will then disintegrate. If a company got to control half the web, then another company got to control half the web, it wouldn't work. So the very important thing about the web was its universality. The same web must work for all types of information, for all languages, for people in all cultures. It should work no matter what type of computer you used, or what type of operating system you used, or which browser software you decided to use. It must work particularly whether or not you had disability. If your eyesight wasn't very good, the web should be able to work for you too. So the universality was its primary goal and has always been a key thing behind its engineering. So there I was, 1992, 93 came around, and during 1993, it was clear that we had to start something. The internet, which is the underlying network, which was invented 20 years before the web, okay? The internet and the web are very different things. The internet is this connectivity between the computers which I'd used to build the web on top of it. The internet was started in the United States. It had even been resisted a bit in Europe. I was very lucky to come at a time when it was just breaking into Europe. So CERN was one of the first places to get the internet. But when the web took off, because the internet was so well established in America, the web took off very, very quickly across the internet in America. The web was at all the American universities. So I really had to have a base in America to start this consortium. So somebody suggested that I should talk to Michael de Touzas, who wrote the preface to the book. And he, as you can tell from the preface to the book, was very supportive. He took me under his wing. He organized for me to go to MIT. He organized for the people he knew in the industry to support the consortium.